All right, good morning, everybody. We'll call this meeting to order. This is a public meeting to consider a commercial cannabis permit application. Today we'll be considering the application of Santa Barbara Manufacturing and Supply Company, LLC, for their site located at 400 East Gutierrez Street. They have three applications under consideration today. One to operate a retail delivery only operation, second is distribution, and third is manufacturing. So just to go into a little bit of background as to why we're here today, on December 5th of last year, the City Council adopted an ordinance to add Chapter 9.44 to the Santa Barbara Municipal Code to regulate commercial cannabis operations in the city. And then in January of 18, the council established an application process and the criteria by which staff would use to evaluate those applications. So in February, the city opened a solicitation process to solicit applications of various types. And as part of that process, as outlined in the municipal code, we are holding this public meeting. The purpose of the meeting is twofold. The first is, and primarily, it's to give the public an opportunity to both learn about these operations and also to submit public comment on those operations. The second is for city staff who are evaluating these applications to understand a little bit more and to have an opportunity to both hear from you and then to ask you some questions as well. I will say, just as by way of background, this process is a little bit different than other projects that are considered by the city in these sort of open forums. Normally, if we have a land use application, for example, there is a lot of information that's out there. And so a member of the public that wants to really study up on a project can do so. There are staff reports or environmental impact reports or any number of analyses that a member of the public, if they so chose, could really be well read by the time they came in to give public comment. In this case, this is a competitive process. And so the city has intentionally not made much of the material within those applications available for public consumption. There are trade secrets, there's confidential information, and there's other information that could potentially give one competitor an advantage over the other. So that's another reason for this public meeting and why we're spending so much time giving you an opportunity to speak to both the television audience as well as the folks here in the room to really describe your operations so they can get to know you and how you plan to do business. So with that, what information is available for the public? And so we've made a couple sources of information available. The first is the actual ordinance. And on this slide that'll be posted to both the city's website as well as viewable online and on city TV, we have that have the ordinance posted at that link there. We also have information on the application process itself, so the public can understand what was the process, what steps did an applicant have to go through in order to be here today. Third, we have a map of the proposed locations of all of the applicants, regardless of type, that are being considered. We had a public meeting last Friday on June 1st to consider the storefront retail, and we're considering the non-storefront retail here today on June 8th. All of those applications are posted on this map here, as well as for you in the room, in the back of the room there, so you can see all the addresses. Finally, for those that wish to give public comment today, we're receiving that. There are speaker slips on the ledge over there, the green ones. Please just fill them out, and at any time, please come up and give those to me, and you'll have an opportunity. If you'd like to submit further public comment, you can do so through a dedicated website that the city has set up, ccbpea@santabarbaraca.gov. So the way that the meeting will go today, we're going to have a brief introduction of the site and of the type of facility being considered. We're then going to turn it over to the applicant. The applicant's team will have 30 minutes to discuss whatever you'd like to related to your 3 different applications. Once that concludes, then we'll turn it to city staff, and city staff will have some questions for you. Then we'll take public comment, and for those of you who wish to give public comment, you'll have 2 minutes to do so. And then we'll do some follow-up potentially based on public comment. And finally, you will have 5 minutes to either respond to public comments you heard or to do whatever sort of summation you would like. And then we'll be done. Is that clear? Okay. All right. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about this particular site. This application is for 400 East Gutierrez Street. You can see it's on Gutierrez Street with Garden Street to the west and Olive Street to the east. And if you want to go take a look at the facility, this is the storefront here. And so that is the site we are considering. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Good morning. My name is Ryan Howe. I'm a resident of Santa Barbara, have been for close to 6 years now. Been recently awarded a medical cannabis dispensary license by the city of Santa Barbara and by the state of California. For those of you who are involved in that process along the way, thank you. It's been quite a journey. It's been a little over 3 years, but we're excited because I believe we're going to be opening now in about 3 weeks. So we'll be the first licensed dispensary open in pretty close to 9 years in the city of Santa Barbara, if I'm not mistaken. And today we're here to talk about Santa Barbara Manufacturing and Supply Company, a kind of brainchild of myself and Clay Becker, the gentleman sitting next to me. We've been talking about it for about 2 years now, how to develop a company like this, and waiting for the right licensing to come along so that we can do it. The spirit behind Santa Barbara Manufacturing and Supply is to achieve a fully integrated manufacturing, product development, and distribution company for the adult market at first, and then closely behind that, hopefully, the medical market as well. The team that I've brought here today is just best in class within the industry. The gentlemen sitting to the left of me are pioneers in the manufacturing wholesale distribution industry. Mr. Becker to the left of me was one of the very first pioneers in starting an oil manufacturing company in Los Angeles called Spliffin. They were one of the first to really manufacture and distribute on a wider scale. The gentleman to the left of him, the two gentlemen to the left of him are from Denver, Colorado. They have been running the most successful manufacturing and wholesale distribution company in Denver for the last 4 years, compliant with both the state the city as well as the state. They've been doing it for a long time. So really excited to introduce you to these guys and to turn the microphone over to Mr. Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. Good morning, everyone. Yes, so we started this process a few years back. We were thinking about when the regulations would change for adult use, what the product development and a company like this would be all about, and the spirit of that. So I come from the intellectual property world. For about 10 years, we were developing hardware for vaping and other unique intellectual property for delivery devices and such. I worked with a well-known movie director, James Cameron, who him and his family have spent a lot of money trying to save people's lives through alternative delivery and technology. Then some people I knew in LA started doing molecular distilled oils. So we felt that we could make a combination So I traveled around the country and I met some people who were also very technical savvy. And then that's how I met these two gentlemen to my left. And I said about the new opportunity, what could happen here in California with Santa Barbara. We could create a whole new area of technology and licensed products that would really reflect the Santa Barbara flavor of the community and be able to really represent the community well for the things that we're known for in regards to quality, innovation, and really being unique and standing out from anyone else here that's doing it in Colorado or, in California or anywhere else in the world. So I've been lucky to be part of this community for 2 years now full time, and it's been a unique process. So when Ryan and I, after Prop 64 was passed in November, and we decided to create this collaboration, and so we've spent a lot of time, a lot of effort to create some of the really unique technology and a unique process to deliver the certain quality that we're looking to. So I look forward to introducing the other managing member who's going to be hopefully collaborating and teaming this up with me, Ross Gartenlaub, and he's going to introduce himself right now. So I'm excited to introduce Ross.
Thank you. Thank you, Clay. So my name is Ross Gartenlaub. I recently relocated from Denver, Colorado. I relocated with my fiance, and we're really excited to be part of the community here and work to grow our family and really integrate here. I got into the cannabis sector in 2013 from New York, where I became a manager and chief operations officer of Local Product Colorado. That was a medical dispensary at the time, and I worked through regulations to take them through adult use. That was a very big accomplishment, especially at the time for us. We were a small company, and working through the system in Denver, especially being the first compliant state, was very difficult to figure out what it is that what the law allows and what we're able to accomplish and do everything by the book and talk to the city of Denver and really have that open communication between the city and us and how to move forward. From there, I moved over to Concentrate Supply Co., which is a licensed brand operated by Starbuds, where Bradley and I have developed one of the biggest brands in Colorado. We do it from a compliance standpoint first and move forward in our sales, and we've built a really great platform that allows us to manage our day-to-day business without having really any hassles and working through our day-to-day. I'd like to introduce Brad Pollock. He's our industry professional and consultant now.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Pollock. I've been in the marijuana manufacturing industry for 4 years now. In that time, through hands-on experience, I've developed a true turnkey business model that builds from the foundations of what it takes to be successful in this sector. Those aspects include the facility design and build-out in order to provide an extremely safe and efficient operation, followed by the standard operating procedures, which truly provide a clear and concise way for the operating activities and maintenance of equipment to be pursued by the staff on a day-to-day basis. In addition, I've developed a custom workflow manual, which is unique to each operation. The workflow manual provides the management and staff with a true understanding of all the different activities that are occurring and how each one interacts with one another in sequential form. It really provides and limits any questions or deviations from a proven model that allows for consistent success across all aspects of the business, whether that involves the consistent safety, security of the operation, as well as the efficiency regarding all the processes and activities that are occurring, and making sure that the business is operating in a successful manner that will allow it to not only be successful in itself, but also be successful for the community that it operates in. Finally, I've also developed a custom software platform. The software was somewhat of a necessity for the industry. As something very new and unique, there was no software solution that truly tracked and collected the right data that would allow a business to be successful. And so I've developed this type of software to understand and identify what data is required in order for a business to be not only transparent, but to understand what's going on inside of it on a day-to-day basis. And that software has really led to the ability for the operations and brands that are operating in other states to be the most successful in those markets. I own multiple companies that are currently operating in this industry, as well as have consulted on multiple licenses in different states and in different countries. These operations currently serve every aspect and every product type that are available to the industry. And so it's important to have that comprehensive knowledge because every market is unique, and knowing how to build a business that is going to achieve the goals of each unique market is one of the crucial aspects to being successful. And so some of these brands are Concentrate Supply Co. and Nomad Extracts, which are operating out of Colorado, which we're very excited about bringing into the California market.
I'd just like to move forward and talk a little bit about our facility. It's 9,600 square feet, roughly. It's important that the community understands that there will be absolutely zero marijuana manufacturing signs outside. This will allow us to operate almost autonomously without anybody actually knowing what we're doing there. It also helps with our safety and security of our employees and our business. I would like to talk a little bit of actually how our manufacturing business works. There's two sides of our manufacturing business. There's our private label service as well as our wholesale services. Our private label service, I think, is going to be really unique here in the county of Santa Barbara, being that it has the most licensed cultivators in the state here. And it really makes a great epicenter for us to really build a solid foundation and a big business for us here. Our private label service is specifically we intake material that is transported through our distribution entity and licensed entity. That third-party source will provide us with instructions on how that process is. So a little bit further down through the presentation, I will show you some various examples of our products that we have, either wax, shatter, a distillation cartridge. So they'll express to us how they want it back. We will give it to them, and then SBMS will manufacture, package, label, and create all this for a fixed price per unit on the back end yield. So that's very important to understand because the minute that we take in delivery is the minute that we start intaking the product within our hands, and we'll talk a little bit about that through our custom software. Our distribution entity will deliver the finished product to the third party, collecting any fees and taxes associated with that specific transaction. They will have a manifest and move through that manifest accordingly, along with an itemized bill that tracks each individual line item from each individual package that was given to us. At that point, the distribution company will file and pay any taxes associated with this specific transaction. The next is our wholesale. Our wholesale is where we go ahead and purchase plant material from licensed cultivators here in the city and the county and the state. At that point, we will perform a straight payment for the plant material upon pickup, collect any applicable taxes associated with the purchase, all handled through our distribution entity. The SBMS will then determine ourselves what product we are going to make it into based on our consumer demand. our industry is very ebb and flow with what people want on a day-to-day basis. So we try to meet the demand that's asked of us. Next, SBMS will then handle all the marketing and the sales responsible for selling that wholesale inventory to licensed dispensaries, and as well as handling all the taxes. You will understand as we get through a little bit more of the presentation how our record-keeping workflow manifest will work from intake all the way through output.
So the main aspects of a manufacturing operation include the following. That is the facility design, the security and surveillance, safety, environmental benefits, the standard operating procedures, along with the different software solutions that we're utilizing, which does include the inventory, financial, and performance management. There is a very rigorous record-keeping component to each operation, which is crucial, as well as an efficient workflow, which coincides to the track and trace system. So to begin, we'd like to discuss the facility design. The facility design is done so in a way to promote a safe environment, as well as to have an efficient flow of the operation, so that as you look at the floor plan, we have all of the manufacturing activities occurring in one side of the facility where the plant material is brought in and reaches the intake station. That's where we check in the plant material, perform a quality control inspection, enter it into the track and trace system, as well as our own software platform, followed by our inventory or plant material storage, which is going to be separated by dry plant material and frozen plant material. From there, everything will be batched out accordingly, where based on the capacity of the extraction systems, we'll know the size of plant material that will be batched into so that the extraction process is efficient. And when we create a batch, that is another point of data entry in our internal system, as well as the track and trace system. So from the batching station, the plant material will go into the extraction department, where it will undergo one of the various extraction methods that are available to us. Post-extraction, you have the plant material, which is now waste, and there is a very detailed process for handling waste material. The extract then goes through the oven degassing process. When you're extracting with hydrocarbon gases, there is a residual solvent that will be in the final extract, and it's crucial that you manage the limits of these hydrocarbon gases in the final product, and so that's what the oven degassing process does. Moving forward, at that point, there could be further refinement, which would be known as distillation or fluid processing, in order to make very specific product types. And once it leaves and has been manufactured into its final product in the manufacturing section, it then gets transported into the packaging, labeling, and storage areas. So we're able to design the facility in a way that allows very specific activities to occur in different sections of the facility itself. And so that allows us to restrict access to the employees that only need access to the specific areas. And allows us to really promote our controls over not only the processes, but the inventory created throughout each step.
What I'd like to show you guys is what a Class 1 Division 1 enclosure looks like.
Yes, so what a Class 1 Division 1 enclosure represents is a spark-free, safe environment for performing an extraction, which involves a hydrocarbon, or otherwise known as a flammable gas. So in order to have a safe environment, you really want to make sure that it is a spark-free environment with the airflow necessary to never allow gas to collect at a dangerous level. So in addition to having other safety protocols, such as your hydrocarbon monitors and eye wash stations, this room is, in essence, what makes sure that there are no dangerous environments that are created during any aspect of the process. Within these extraction enclosures are the extraction systems, and all extraction systems are considered closed-loop extraction systems that have been verified through a peer review by a professional engineer. And so just to briefly touch upon what a closed-loop system is, a closed-loop system means that the gas that's being used in the extraction process is being recycled, so that the gas will go from the gas chamber through the collection column where the plant material is in order to make the extract, and then the gas is reclaimed back into the gas chamber itself. And so there is no release of gas through a closed-loop system, other than when you're opening the collection basin, and there might be some small amounts of residual gas that gets released, and that's why we use an enclosure that has a CFM of no less than 2,000 CFM to make sure that the air is always circulating and that there is no component inside that has any electrics that would be able to create a spark.
Our technicians are not even allowed to bring their cell phone into the Class 1 Div 1 enclosure, just as an extra protocol to ensure their safety, our safety, and the community's safety.
And most of our pumps and systems are pneumatic, so they're air powered. So that's.
So here we're just looking at an example of what an extraction system looks like and a technician who's operating that. The extraction system itself is very basic. It's all stainless steel components with various valves that control the movement of the gas. And so there is a very regimented process for the operation of these systems that are consistent throughout every type of extraction that occurs. You also see an exhibit of the vacuum degassing process using the ovens, as well as the vacuum pumps, which contain an EMF filter. This filter captures and restricts any release of any gas that might be being released during this process, as well as the oil itself, because this is an oil pump. Next, we have the distillation process. Distillation is something that's very new to the industry that has become very predominant over the past couple of years, because what distillation does, just like it does with alcohol, is it refines the crude extract of marijuana into a more purified form. And when you're dealing with a more purified form of marijuana oil, you're able to increase the potencies to approximately 95% within every batch. Now, with that potency, what you're doing is you're eliminating the variance when using that as an ingredient to make a finished product. So it's not like the older versions of oils that were averaging, let's say, 65 to 75% potency, which in effect would result in a 25 to 35% variance in knowing exactly how many milligrams of cannabinoids are being entered and consumed at a time. So the distillation process, through its creating of a potent finished product, allows you to really be extremely accurate and letting your consumers know exactly what they're consuming and making it as clean as possible.
This accuracy allows us to help with, as we wanted to progress with the technical aspects and the different types of proprietary delivery devices. When you have these tight controls, it allows us to really offer, here in California, we can almost do a combination of technology and this new cannabis space by having such tight tolerances for products and really understanding the true molecular nature of how to deliver it.
It allows us to dose properly our patients, especially when you start getting into new technologies that we're currently working with now, being nanotechnology, some water-soluble, or actually breaking down the THC or the cannabinoid molecule to 40 nanometers, which now becomes a topical that your body can absorb. That's very important as we move forward to, people who have knee pains, shoulder pains, surgery.
Very site-specific elements.
Now, I think it's also very important to understand that security is definitely one of our biggest concerns here. And, explain to you exactly how we handle our day-to-day. No material will ever be seen by the public. We will be utilizing secured loading and unloading in specific areas that the public can never see. We work with locking hard-lived dumpsters. That's really important for our waste. We don't want any individual jumping into our dumpsters trying to pull through material. We even have SOP waste waste SOPs that basically make the product unusable even, after it's, finished going through its extraction process. Every door will have a key fob access by each employee. The employees will only be allowed to be in their specific area, allowing us to track the goings and comings of each one of our employees as needed. Our security alarm. There will be various different panic buttons set up throughout the facility, as well as with each manager at a managerial station. This is, extremely important when we're just talking about, our employee safety, our monetary safety, our neighbor safety, which is extremely important to us as well. And then our interior and exterior surveillance cameras. You can actually see in the top right corner, that camera up there is actually an XP rated camera, XP being explosion proof. And I'll just continue here. Going more into our safety, we'll have fire alarm and suppression systems throughout the facility. One of the biggest reasons why we took on this facility is it had a very new fire suppression system in the building, allowing us to basically almost have it plug and play and not have to worry about bringing in a new sprinkler system. There will be gas detectors, not only on the inside and outside of the extraction chambers, but also close by. There will be air filtration systems, alleviating any smells, making the air clean, eye-wash stations for any issues, and we have specific emergency protocols should anything go awry, and located throughout the facility. You'll see anything that's flammable or liquid flammable storage will be held in clearly marked LPG and flammable liquid storage cages. Bradley?
So it's obviously very important that we're considering any environmental impacts in any of the processes that are occurring in the facility. Waste management of the post-extracted plant material is one of those, and making sure that all the post-extracted plant material is mixed with soil before it is then placed in the locking hard lid dumpster, as well as maintaining a waste log for everything that comes into the facility so that we can track it all the way through the process. There's also the professional disposal through local contracts with these suppliers for any of the disposal of the guests, as well as the flammable liquids that may be used in any of the processes. The air quality control throughout the facility is very important. We have HEPA filtration, fume hoods that are used when dealing with the flammable liquids, carbon filtration systems throughout the facility for the odor, oil mist filters on the vacuum pumps to control any of the off-gassing processes, as well as dedicated intake and exhaust related to the extraction enclosure itself. Another thing that we utilize is alcohol recycling. So a lot of alcohol is used for different processes, such as something as simple as cleaning, or something more involved, such as the refinement of the marijuana extract in its crude form. And so in order to limit the alcohol use, we have our own alcohol recycling system. It is also in itself rated for Class 1 Division 1 as a safe machine. The standard operating procedures are one of the most important things that we incorporate into our business on a day-to-day basis. All staff are trained on every aspect of the standard operating procedures, and that training as well involves continuing education. There's quarterly and biannual education courses that will update staff regarding any changes that may occur to these standard operating procedures. It's a very involved manual that stretches approximately 600 pages long, and without going into too much detail now, we've provided in the slideshow some of the main categories that are involved.
So I just realized that we're blowing through time here, so I apologize. But I'd like to just take you through our quick, rundown of our track and trace system and our internal custom software. And we'll try and get through to the other points, and
Sure. So the software is something that provides a little bit more of a robust and comprehensive way to track all the activities, processes, in addition to the staff performance throughout each operating activity going on in the facility. A few key aspects would be the inventory management. So every time we receive plant material at the facility, it has a unique intake ID. That intake ID correlates directly to the manifest number that would be allocated during the track and trace system, and then every unique batch ID that will dictate what it is that's going to occur to that batch will have the same intake ID. And what that allows us to do is if you make, let's say, a dozen different batches from a single intake ID, and at any point in time there's an indication that there might have been some contamination from that plant source, we're able to identify very specifically all the batches that were generated from that plant source and very quickly pull that from inventory or any process where it's at.
We have a recall procedure that will allow us to start recall inside of 2 minutes, which is huge in our industry, especially for a small player. I just want you to notice on the picture here, the top left corner of the bag of flour right there, that is what's called a metric tag. Metric is going to be the state compliant track and trace system. Every single one of our batches has the metric tag ID embedded in our batch process. So that allows us to know exactly who it came from, when it came from, and start our recall procedures should there be any issues right from there. Our best practices are number one, safety, security, compliance, and education. Even though that we are a cannabis company, we have a zero tolerance for cannabis consumption on our present premises. Ryan, I'd just like to.
So since we have a limited amount of time, why don't we're going to get to the distribution?
Or, yeah, perfect. Sorry, guys. I could talk about this forever. So, our distribution is again, we use our back end software to create a custom online ordering platform for our distribution business. Brad.
Yeah, so the online ordering platform will be related to both the private label services and the B2B transactions, which represent the wholesale transactions. And so with the distribution component, we're mainly concerned with making sure that all the transportation requirements are adhered to on every transaction, as well as the manifest and tracking of these transactions. We want to know exactly where the location is of every transaction from the point that it leaves the facility until the point where the driver is back safely at the facility. There are very detailed procedures for the pickup and delivery requirements in order to ensure that safety, as well as more compliance-related components regarding the collections of any payments that would be related to a transaction, the tax filing and payments that would be related, and the record keeping. Record keeping is something that will always occur in no less than two forms. There'll always be the paper transaction as well as the virtual or digital documentation that we keep.
Sorry.
And also for the distribution part is a very key component, because as we're manufacturing things that represent the Santa Barbara flavor and spirit, we want to make sure that we can handle that, bringing those products to market with the products coming in and the products going out to other retailers. It also allows us to solidify the bond with the other cultivators and farmers in the community, because it would allow us to work with their material and allow them to also participate in the new licensing scheme statewide.
I just want to show you a little bit of
I'm
that.
going to jump in here. We're about out of time, but I do have several questions about distribution.
Great.
So whatever you didn't get to in your presentation, we'll pick up in the Q&A.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, that's fine.
Real quick, Ross, or are we out of time?
You're out of time, but you'll have your 5 minutes at the end to pick up as well.
Okay.
And again, I think we'll touch on some of the things you wanted to get into in the Q&A.
Great.
So you're welcome to do that. All right. Well, thank you. That was really helpful. That was helpful for us to see that. So I'm sorry, my failure. I didn't introduce somebody with me, another city staff. This is Tava Ostringer, the assistant city attorney. And so both of us may be asking you questions in this period. Sorry. My questions are on probably across all three of your application types. I'm not going to take them in discrete order, so just answer them as you will. But I have about 7 categories or so of questions I want to touch on, and the first one has to do with just the chemical handling. You went into a lot of that, a lot of detail, but I guess my remaining question is, you walked us through a number of techniques that you're using, and certainly your proposal went into greater detail on different processes. Are there any of them that you are introducing to this Santa Barbara facility that are new to you, that you haven't employed in your other operations in Colorado?
None of these are new techniques or processes. These are ones that we've actually been refining for many years, and then now it's a combination of what we learned to do in Los Angeles and in Colorado to make a unique thing for here. So everything is tried and true and been done for years.
And it's not just tried and true and done by the industry; it's by this specific team.
Group
so
of
you have
individuals,
experience
yes.
in all of these different industrial techniques.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. With regard to tracking and the integration into the metric system, I believe in your proposal you were using Weave as one of your...
That's for the retail
Okay.
end and the delivery.
For the delivery
Yep.
side. For the distribution specifically, is there another interface that goes into...
So it's specifically our custom software that we've built that I didn't really get to go into it a little bit. But
Quickly, let me just say something. So in our application, it mentions Weave in our distribution.
in our delivery.
As part of the
distribution
delivery
as well.
side,
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was.
But what we've decided since is that Brad and Ross have created an extremely robust platform for both manufacturing and distribution, which I was focused at the time because I wrote a lot of the application along with Brad on the manufacturing piece and their platform and their custom platform around the manufacturing piece. I didn't realize at the time how robust their distribution piece is as well. In fact, better than Weave. So what we've decided to do is to use their custom integrated software program that's been up and operating in Denver for 4 years under Metric for the distribution as well. So I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
And it
So-
will tie into metric.
So as a follow-up to this meeting, that would be an example of something we'd like you to put into writing. And any detail that is, there was fairly in-depth discussion of Weave, but that's something that we're pretty familiar with and how that ties into metric. If this is proprietary, if there's any other information that you can give us, not trade secret necessarily, but that would help us to understand and be comfortable with that for the distribution application, please submit that to us.
Great.
That would be helpful. Okay. So within the tracking side, one of the things that your proposal talked about was the intake side. When you're receiving the raw product, for example, and it says that there's an intake manager who does a quality check, logs it into your system, and checks for discrepancies. My question was, what if there is a discrepancy? What if the weight is different or whatever? What happens then?
Good point. So whenever there's any discrepancy related to the manifest itself, which is going to describe, it's first going to have every package listed that's being received and the weight of each one of those packages. First thing that we're checking for is to make sure that all of the actual package identification cards are present as listed on the manifest. Then each one of those packages will be physically weighed to ensure that the weight is matching up to what the manifest states. If there was ever any discrepancy at that point, the way that it states in Colorado is that you're allowed a very small variation, where if it's a 1,000 gram bag and then you physically weigh it and it's 998. At that point, we'd be willing to accept it. If there's any significant variation or deviation from the reported weights, at that point, it cannot be accepted and it needs to be rejected and returned, and the transaction needs to be readjusted so that the manifest accurately portrays what it is that we're receiving in order to avoid any continued discrepancies that would follow through with, well, what happened with that plant material when they said they gave you 1,000 grams and you're reporting that you got 900 grams. It's definitely something that will carry on throughout every different aspect of that batch.
When metric actually comes into play here, when the manifest comes in, you're able to virtually accept it or reject it. And then once you reject it, you have 24 hours to return the product. And then a manifest is sent from our location back to the cultivation to show paper trail of that rejected product.
And the same would hold true not just for weight, but for any labeling discrepancy or anything else, right? Any
Correct.
other characteristic of the product that doesn't match up with what you...
And anything that would be abnormal, we would not accept that product intake at all.
Kind of staying on the tracking side with just reconciliations of incoming, outgoing, and waste. I'm assuming it's a kind of a mass balance equation, right? Can you talk a little bit about what is your reconciliation process? How often does it occur? How much of it is electronic record keeping versus physical? Just briefly describe that.
Brought a batch
Sure.
ticket.
So everything that we do will always have both a paper documentation and two forms of the virtual documentation. Because Metric, as the track and trace program, is limited in how much data that it collects, that's where our custom software really steps up and provides a lot more accountability. So if we receive plant material, we're not only registering it into the Metric track and trace program, we're also entering it in our own intake log, which documents not only what the Metric tag ID was, but it also helps us provide more information. Was this taken in as a private label transaction or a wholesale transaction? Was this recreational or medical? What is the description of the plant material? Is it dry? Is it frozen? Is it trim? Is it whole plant? As well as the source. And so we have source codes for everyone to have a unique identifier for that. And so that's what creates our intake ID, is a combination of those variables. So we're able to audit on a weekly basis with the direct managers, and then on a monthly basis again with our compliance managers, in order to make sure that what Metric states matches our own internal software, and investigate that before too much time would go by to be able to effectively investigate any discrepancies. Furthermore, when we go into the batching process, as I said, every batch that's created from the same intake will have a common intake ID and then a unique batch ID, which the batch ID will then, from our internal software, be able to pretty much tell the story of what it is that that batch is going to undergo. We have different batch ID codes that relate to the processing type, so what type of gas is going to be used, the product type, so what type of product that batch is going to be made into, the packaging type, so that we know what packaging will be used for that final product, and then finally what the name of that is going to be labeled as a final product. And so as we're creating batch ID line items in our own software, we're first tracking every activity and data field that would be relevant to being able to investigate anything related to that batch. And then from the completion of that batch, it gets checked into our inventory tracking system, as well as it matching up to entering the same final batch weight for the Metric track and trace program. And so throughout this process, we also have a batch ticket, a physical paper batch ticket that will accompany this batch throughout every single process. And so we found that having the virtual and paper documentation is crucial to identifying any type of error that could have occurred in the virtual process, whether it's just something as, simply hitting a 1 instead of a 2, but that creates a big discrepancy when it gets to the end of the line, and the batch paperwork is that sort of backup in order to really identify what exactly happened and what you've created here.
Not to mention the software on the virtual end has multiple data point entries from various different managers. So we could check from one manager to the other. They're basically inputting the same information, so we're able to see any discrepancies pretty much immediately.
Right. So what Ross is discussing more now is the diversion tactics that we have to make sure that there is never any, let's say, discrepancy that can't be investigated with more than one staff member. So every data point entry when it comes to the crucial data point entries, what the finished batch weight is, what the finished unit count is, we have two different managers that are reporting in separate fields. And not only is it separate fields, but they don't have access to know what the other one previously reported. So it allows us to really know that if there was ever a discrepancy, we have two different staff members that we would be investigating that discrepancy with to make sure that we're able to truly identify, what exactly happened here. Was it simply just a mistake, or was this something that needs further investigation and, of course, at that point, involvement with the police department to make sure that we attend to any type of discrepancy with our inventory.
Thank you. Your proposal talked about battery backup for your electronic systems and then specifically to your tracking system. And then you talked about if there is a software outage, right? Not just a power outage, but a software glitch and you're knocked offline, you go to paper standby. It was intriguing to me. I just thought, well, how often does that happen? So in your other operations in Colorado, how often were you at the mercy of the internet or whatever, and you say, "Oh gosh,"
So at first, it's a great question, because at first there was a company called MJ Freeway, still exists, and they're a POS and tracking company. They would go down pretty often. There would be days where they would be out for about 6 or 8 hours. Their servers would be down, and so you would have to find a different way to do business. And that's why, going back to our software, it was really crucial for us to start building something of this need, because, we're able to we're able to hold our fate in our own destiny, in our own hands.
So Metric as well, unfortunately, as a platform that is new and is being used, throughout the country, is something that we found has on occasion, I'd say maybe once or twice a month, might incur a period of time where for a few hours or even longer, the system itself is not working. And at that point, we want to make sure that we have still the two forms of documentation that we could go back to and refer to, which would be the paper documentation and our own digital records. But we still will never advance a batch beyond its current status until Metric itself is back up online. So we want to make sure that we're capturing the data immediately and able to, once Metric comes back online, able to then update Metric before advancing any batch to its next process step.
So effectively, if Metric is down, you're down.
Yes,
right?
we'll be very limited in advancing batches. We'll still be able to perform all the processes and activities that are occurring. It's just more of a data entry catch-up before making sure that you move the product from, let's say, the packaging department to the inventory storage department. You wouldn't want to do that until you've made sure that everything has been done on Metric as well.
Okay. Just a quick point of clarification on building security. So you mentioned the cameras, and I saw that your widespread use of cameras and access control. With regard to on-site human security, can you remind me of what you're using in terms of a physical presence?
Sure. So there is going to be the 24-hour patrol service that'll be provided by a third party. And so that's not only to ensure the safety of the staff that are operating during their shifts, but as well when the building is not in operation, we really want to make sure that there is no threat of the ability for someone to break in and steal any of the inventory that might be in the building at that time.
And just so I'm clear, because this is something I did have a question on, that's like mobile
Yes.
drive-by sort of stuff. So in terms of an on-site security person, that's not included in the proposal.
Yes, from our experience, we haven't seen a true need for on-site security because one, it's not an open the facility is not open to the public. So even someone getting in is something that's it's going to be like a midday break-in where they would have to bust open the door and then penetrate through the facility. So I think that it's something more or less where with the external patrol service, that would be that would allow us to identify anything that's occurring that would be a threat. And then once you're in the facility, not only do you have the external doors, which are solid security doors, but you have those same types of doors throughout the facility. So even if someone broke in through one door, they would still be isolated within, the first area and unable to just continue to just breach the entire property or the entire facility in one fell swoop. So
Is that called a man trap or something? You have sort of man traps throughout where...
It's the egress and regress, like everything is controlled access. So, it allows for individuals who are allowed to go to certain areas that have been pre-designated access to those areas and prevents people from piggybacking and being able to have just uncontrolled access.
the other thing, as other operations in Colorado and other states have gone, is we've been successful in developing operations that are in operation for 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And that really makes it a lot easier for there to be a more secure facility in operation. And so that's why we want to have that 24-hour-a-day external security patrol. But nonetheless, we feel that...
We'll have on-site people there 24 hours a day in 3 various overlapping shifts.
Which is why we have those panic buttons throughout the facility so that it could really alert the police right away if there was anything that was happening at the facility.
I don't want you to tell me and the security person passes between 12 and 2. Don't mean that. But what is that, you can have varying levels of patrol security, everything from, one security firm that has numerous sites in a downtown corridor and, ends up passing them once an hour, say. So again, I'm not trying to grill you on this. I just want to make sure I'm abundantly clear. Is this, can you give me I guess I'm still unclear on, is this the third-party patrol contractor comes by at some frequency and drives around the perimeter of your building? Or is this, is there some guarantee that they're there every X many minutes? And what's the response time if there is a problem? That's the sort of thing I'm trying to get at.
Understood.
So it's been my experience in working with the city guys that they like a dedicated security guard to our facility. And so that would be something that, we would be willing to have a dedicated security guard and who would also patrol a 200-foot radius
Within
around the building.
the front of the entrance.
Yeah. So that's really how our plan was designed. Sorry if it wasn't clear enough.
Okay.
In Colorado, I think you guys use an external service, right? That works for other companies as well and just kind of drives by once an hour or whatever.
Actually, in Colorado, we've found over the years that on the manufacturing side, there's really been no security threats. We don't utilize any security or patrol service out in Colorado. We have our alarm systems with our panic buttons, but we don't employ or use any third-party service for security in Colorado.
Part of this discussion, and I'm not pushing you one way or another. So if that's something you're proposing, if you're saying, I realize that wasn't clear in our proposal, what we really meant was, then you can follow up in writing with that to that effect. Because part of these, some of my questions also carry over to the load in, load out sort of procedures for the distribution and the delivery only side. And my understanding of what on-site security you have kind of frames my question. So that's why I was spending so much time on that. So nice segue for myself. Vehicle security. My next set. So within that understanding, Mr. Howe, of what you regardless of the proposal, what you're actually intending in regards to on-site security. I do want to talk a bit about the distribution and delivery only side in terms of taking product from the facility to a transport vehicle. How many people? Is that teams of one, teams of two? What the, in general, what the protocols are? And then if you could also talk about the destination. So when the delivery is made, what do you have in mind in terms of then the transport from your vehicle to your customer, to the customer's facility? So just if you could just kind of talk about that in general, that would be helpful.
Oh, great. So I kind of, because we didn't really get into distribution at all, so I just put up the slide here of our transportation vehicles. When we go ahead and box our package that goes to a licensed dispensary, it will be pretty much in an unmarked box with tamper tape, evident tape going across it. This is, again, very important to us. We've kind of adopted our Colorado rules into this because we think that they really meet and exceed what we're looking to do. All of our boxes will have this tampered evident tape on there. So if it ever gets to the final location, we instruct our licensees to not accept the package should anything go on, and to alert us if that tamper tape has been broken. To each one of these vehicles, our distribution and delivery drivers are given a company-issued phone that's able to be GPS tracked. So we're able to follow our guys all over the place. I'm sorry.
I just want to mention, because in the new ordinance, unarmed security is our thing. So our best thing is just to be safe, aware, and be able to respond to alert authorities as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
I'd like to add that, Ross, I think what I heard Matt say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, is that kind of the procedure for, taking the finished product out to the vehicle, then transporting that vehicle to the new location. You kind of want to understand what our kind of loading procedures are, and is that what you're asking?
I was going to ask about the vehicle too, so go ahead and finish.
Thank
and
you.
Then, yes, you can circle back around to that.
So it's really important to understand a little bit more of our process as it comes down from our finished product room, how it's handled. Once it is manifested, it is double checked by a manager before it actually gets boxed. Each one of those boxes will also, like I said, have limited marking, but on the boxes there will also be a little sticker. On that sticker, we'll have just the batch IDs that are associated within that batch. Again, then they will be wrapped up with the tamper tape, so that when it gets to its final location, it could be double-checked against the manifest, as well as the specific box that it came from. At that point, when we're moving material from our distribution area into our distribution transport secured vehicle, it is done with 2 or 3 individuals. It all depends on, we like to have one person who doesn't have boxes in their hand, just in case.
Supervising and observing the chain of custody of all the material along that process before it goes to the next destination.
Correct. And then once it's actually secured within the vehicle, it is double-checked against the manifest, given to the driver. The driver is then to go to their final location with that specific product. At that point, when the driver takes the material out, gets to the licensed facility, the driver is to stay there with the licensed entity to double check that all the material is there so that he can get a signed receipt that we bring back and hold.
Because at that moment, we will collect all the tax on
That's
behalf
correct.
of the city and the state that we're responsible for once that product is physically handed off at that moment for that next chain of custody. So it's really important that all those taxes are collected and reported and held in a segregated.
Correct. And now we're also developing within our software, hasn't been finalized yet, but where the our transporter, our trained driver, is able to kind of click the area that he's already delivered, so that we could see it on the back end that it's gotten there safe.
So the facility kind of it comes with a loading area in the back, which is fenced in and gated, which it is off of a cul-de-sac street, Montecito, where it ends. It ends right in the back of the. You guys, I'm sure you walked it, so you've seen it. It also has loading doors off the side near the manufacturing area. So I think really what it comes down to is depends on the size of what we're taking in and out. Coming out of the facility, the size, the actual mere size and quantities are tend to be a bit smaller, because if you've seen what our packages and what our finished products look like, a lot of them are this big, and they're in these boxes which are about this big, and so. But sometimes coming into the facility, there's a few 100 pounds of material. So there we're being a little bit more careful. And so the procedure when it comes to some of the larger items that come in and out of the facility, we will have a security guard present at that time as the trucks are loaded and being unloaded. For the larger types of transactions, they're going to come in through the back.
Right. Now that actually goes to another great point. We'll be bringing in our resource material, our biomass, in opaque containers as well that are unmarked.
Nondescript.
Yeah. So, that's also a very big part of this. What we do in Colorado is we have almost like opaque tubs, and then they are zip tied at the end. So that that once it gets to that final location, it hasn't been tampered with.
Just a couple of follow-up comments on that then. So I'll just be clear, this was an area that we as an evaluation team were looking for more information. So on the load in, load out, use of security, when you're using security, when you're not. You did describe the secure location for loading, in your proposal. But that would be an area that would give us more comfort. If you could. Right.
Yeah.
Could
and I think we have a standard operating procedure for that. So why don't we just include that?
Yep.
Okay.
Two last questions on distribution security. You have a lot of control over your site and the conditions under which you're loading your own vehicles and things with your drivers. They will drive to a location. What if they can't park close, or whatever? You have a single driver. Is it up to them to deliver the material to the store? Does the store come out to the vehicle wherever you happen to be and they take it, or?
That's a great question. So it's a little bit of both, but ideally the stores, in my experience, the stores, with discretion, allow for either a back entrance delivery.
Yeah, they have we'll coordinate with them what time we're going to deliver. They also have their own security, and they're very aware of operational security of their own location. So there'll be some coordination of what time things are coming. There'll be a discrete ability for our people to be able to hand them the materials and them to properly receive it, us to collect the tax portion plus the wholesale portion, and then be able for them to continue on their route and with the very quickly and very efficiently with.
Now, early on.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump in here. Sorry. So depending on the size of the order or how much cash we might be taking in and out of the facility, there are times, and I wouldn't call them special occasions because it happens more often than a special occasion, where we will have a security guard accompany the transaction. So walk in with the driver and walk out with the driver when they're carrying cash. So that does happen from time to time. And it's usually based on the size of the order and whether or not we're picking up a large amount of cash at the time and having to transport that from the order.
So I was just going to say that early on, I've tried to put myself in almost every position within our manufacturing company. So, I would do a lot of my distribution and when I initially got to Concentrate Supply Co. And in my experience, what tends to happen is you call when you're 15 or 10 minutes out, and the licensed dispensaries, tend to have a security guard there waiting for you in order to walk you in. And especially if you're handling a lot of cash, they walk you to your car as well.
And like you said, you can make special. I mean, if you were doing that, I'm sure you would be calling the dispensary and saying, "I'm going to need
we
your
have other
security."
precautions, and sometimes it's just for our own operational security. Like if you saw a security guard and we told you exactly how much we bring them in for what dollar amount, then you would know you'd only.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Last one is related to mechanical difficulty on the vehicle. So you get a flat tire, you crack a radiator in transit. You've got product. What do you do?
So this has actually happened. This is not a. This has happened to us in Colorado. At that point, you have mechanical difficulties. Your driver is instructed to call management immediately, and from that point, we send a new driver out there to collect all the product. They collect the product and the driver. They bring it back to just basically double check inventory before it heads out, and at that point we handle the automotive issues from there. But it's especially with metric, it gets a little tricky because you want to be able to be like, hey, it got manifested. Then we have to show the manifest on the way back, and that's why we bring it back to the facility to recheck it before it goes back out.
That was another area I was hoping to get a little bit more information on, was just the mechanical side. I'm sure you have a procedure, and it sounds like you've handled it in the past, but that would be helpful.
We have.
Definitely. We have a lot of safety kits and always use new equipment and
Matt, I think it's also important to understand that the wholesale distribution operation and the retail delivery service only operation from a back end standpoint work almost identical. I mean, every process, the tracking of it, the GPS systems, everything, the security of the drivers, all that, it's all the same, okay? The only difference is the end user.
Well, I'd also like to just go back to the tracking. On every manifest that we issue, that's an outgoing manifest, it always has our driver's ID information and vehicle information located on the manifest. So it'll always have the license plate number, the driver's license number, and the person who's assisting that product. So that's one of the protocols that we have to bring the product back, because now we have to remanifest it to another individual in another transport vehicle.
Two last questions on distribution, then I'm done. Then we can move on to another one. I'm sure you'll ramp up, but for the initial size or whatever you forecast based on growth, what's the size of your delivery fleet? It sounds like, are you using the same vehicles for both customer,
No.
two different fleets? Can you give me a sense of the size of the wholesale side as well as the delivery to customer side?
So total vehicles right now, we're going to start out initially for the retail delivery. We have 2 hydrogen-powered cars that we were going to use for that, and then we have 2 more commercial vehicles for the wholesale delivery.
And are they all to be parked on site, in the parking spaces allocated to Gutierrez, or
Yes.
are you planning to park them off site somewhere?
Well, the delivery vehicles will be parked off site. They won't really be around much, right? They'll be moving. They'll just be coming in to pick up, and then the distribution. Would you guys normally park those?
Oh
on
yeah,
site?
definitely. Yeah, we park our distribution vehicles on site.
So the commercial ones
Yeah,
are
the
parked on site.
commercials. Yeah.
But you're not doing. Are you doing delivery to cut the retail side 24 hours a day? Because they're going to be parked at some point.
No.
Yeah, at some point, even they'll be in the locks.
Okay, so those will all be. That's what I'm getting at.
There's no-
on street or off street. You're going to be off street on your site for your entire fleet
For our distribution.
Yes.
Yeah.
and the retail.
The delivery will be, It depends. We have a storage area that we were thinking about keeping those cars.
An auxiliary site that we had that was just for packaging and some other, that was not as high rent as for those other things that are just
But under your
everyday
control.
items.
Yeah,
totally,
so
completely under
so
our control.
3 blocks away we have another facility
Okay.
and with a parking lot, and that's
Okay.
most likely where we'd keep them.
One of the things that's top of mind, the reason I ask it, partly because we're curious, but also that's a neighborhood issue. People
Yeah.
like, great, make sure your vehicles are on your own property, not
Yeah,
on
definitely.
street, right?
Yeah, we.
I'm not going to get into it now because it's too difficult to describe, but when we do the site visit, it's just a heads up. We're going to want to understand better the path of travel of vehicles from your, not parcel, not really the right word, but your area in the context of the larger parcel and easements and things. But I don't want to get into that today, but that's just something that we'll bring whoever you'd like to bring on that site visit to be able to discuss that with other city staff.
That's on Wednesday, correct?
Yep. Last set of questions I have is really on air quality and personal protective equipment and things like that. So it's kind of my last area of inquiry. Could you talk a little bit about you talked about the air exchange rates, especially in the extraction rooms, which are really high. In general, where there are employees, it could be extraction, could be in packaging, could be in other areas. Can you talk a little bit about the detection systems that you're using for, explosive gases, carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide, or other things that you're monitoring for?
Sure. So anytime you're using flammable liquids and gases, those activities are going to be performed in an enclosed area. So it wouldn't be sort of open to and exposed to general or common areas of the facility. So depending on what is being performed within that enclosed area, the proper monitoring system or detection system will be there. So within the extraction enclosure room, you have your hydrocarbon monitor system. If there was CO2 extraction, you would have your CO2 monitor in that area. When it comes to flammable liquids and gases, you're dealing with your smoke detectors and fire alarm systems. And then you have your regular, carbon monoxide and fire throughout the entire facility.
And all those detectors are of the most professional grade, and in addition, we'll have a redundancy of a more lower commercial grade backup just in case on all those systems. So there's a lot of redundancy all over the place.
And this could be something where you point me to if I missed it. I didn't see it in the proposal. I saw in the proposal discussion on like the combustible gas indicators and things. I didn't see much about CO2 monitoring or other monitors you're using. If you could either point me in that direction or fill in that gap, that would be really helpful to us.
Okay.
So does that
Definitely.
make sense?
Of course.
Okay. And how it's tied into the building or other monitoring networks that you have, just kind of the integration there would be helpful. The other thing we were looking for some information on was, and I'm sure you have an SOP for this, was how to ensure employee safety if there is a gas leak or something. So if there is a leak, I saw spill containment, I saw some other things. I didn't see things on the level of employee PPE, the exclusion notification sort of stuff, in that case. So if you could either talk about it here today, and then if you're able to fill in those gaps in writing, that would be helpful also.
Of course. So, we do have a detailed SOP regarding all those components. So when it comes to your PPE, your personal protective equipment, those are specific to the activities that are being performed by the staff members. So at the highest level, we have the employees with lab coats, eye protection, hair nets, if there's facial hair, beard nets, nitrile gloves, no open-toed shoes, and I believe that covers, the standard PPE that you would see throughout any of the manufacturing processes themselves. But all emergency procedures are as well related specifically to the activity. So there would be the action protocols related to any emergency. For example, if there was a gas leak on the extraction equipment itself within the extraction enclosure. The staff members are trained to seal off any valves in order to limit the amount of gas leak to wherever there's some kind of fault in the equipment, and then to immediately remove themselves from the extraction room and close the door to the extraction enclosure. The reason why we do that is because the airflow is going to not allow there to be any collection of the gases within that enclosure, and so you're pretty much allowing the equipment to leak out whatever gas that's going to leak out because of a faulty piece of equipment, and the room itself is what will circulate that air out in a manner to not allow there to be explosive levels of that gas. And so they would, and the hydrocarbon monitor as well is going to be the indication for them to know when it's safe to enter back into the room, because it would, at some point turn off because the gas would have filtered out. And then at that point, the machine gets pretty much quarantined, and it gets taken apart, brought back to the manufacturer in order for it to be inspected before, and then pressure tested, and new seals added to it to make sure that it's in good working order.
I mean, and I want to be clear, you could give me an infinite number of SOPs for the smallest of incidents, so I'm not looking for we knocked over a vial of alcohol. Right. But the big ticket contingency items, things like gas leaks, or I'll leave it to your discretion. If you're willing, if you can share some of those.
Of course.
Definitely.
Because that's really, where we have a high interest, is not when things are going well day to day.
Yeah, because we also live in the community, and the people that the staff that we're going to employ are also part of the community. So we want everyone to go home safe, and everyone to enjoy working with us and for us, and continue that as a tradition.
So I don't need every SOP that you could, or don't go off and write another 600 of them. It's just the ones that I think you get a sense of what we're interested in.
Yes, I do.
Last thing on air quality, maintenance plans and things, or your protocols for checking your systems, changing out monitors, valves, filters, that sort of thing. Again, you might be able to direct me to that, but that was an area that I saw that we could use a little bit more information as well. So I'm sure you have it.
Definitely.
But I know it's always kind of a balancing act of how much do you include versus.
We weren't sure to throw 300 pages at you or 500 pages at you. We thought maybe keep it closer to 3.
Be able to upload the whole thing.
But again, that's I don't need an exhaustive treatise on every single valve you have in the building. Just standard protocols for these critical systems, especially related to safety and things. This is our surveillance program. This is how often things get changed out.
Definitely.
So you're proposing the 3 different business types at the same facility. So I just wanted to know if you could talk about how they integrate, or maybe they don't integrate, and how the employees integrate, or maybe they don't integrate, and how that works.
Good point. So there actually would be very little and minimal integration between each of these licensees operating within the same facility. So there are different staff members involved with each one of these licenses, different areas of the facility itself which isolate one another from another. And the only time that there would be that sort of interaction was when there would be an actual transaction where if the manufacturing facility had its inventory and it was going to be sold or distributed through a wholesale transaction. At that point, there is a transaction record that will occur in between these entities or licenses, even though they're within the same building. And so we try and utilize that as, once again, another form of verification and documentation. but everything would be isolated. There would be no commingling of staff, no commingling of inventories, and each process would be handled sort of independently, but at the same time with at least two of those departments or licenses working side by side to perform one of these types of transactions.
So would the delivery drivers have access, key card access to the facility?
They would have access. So the beautiful thing about the access and division of the facility is that their key card will only get them access to their department that they would be able to have access to. They would never be able to just sort of walk into the manufacturing side of the business or even the inventory that's being stored by the manufacturing entity. So it's very isolated, and that's part of that whole key fob system and knowing what employees have access to which areas of the facility.
Then I just had a question on employees, because I noted that you have proposed a 24-hour operation. So how many employees are you looking at?
So we didn't get a chance to discuss the slide for the management, but there's various types of different managers, and then you have your technicians that are operating the equipment, then you have your packaging staff, then you have more of your compliance, administrative. And so the development of the business will be performed in phases. And as more volume of activity is occurring, that's where, let's say, one person that was handling potentially, inventory and delivery prep management, at some volume is going to trigger an additional hire and the division of those responsibilities. And so the facility won't launch with 24 hours or 7 days a week. We've just found that over time, it doesn't take long before the demand would support that type of operation and increase in staff. So in the beginning, you're looking at about a core staff of about a dozen to 15 members, and as that volume increases, you'll see those staff members increasing, whether it be on the management or technician or packaging side or delivery driver side. Those will grow ergonomically with the demand of the business and the production capacities that it's performing.
Because just as market demand increases and the unique areas that we could have for some licensing for other people that we can assist in this market, we just wanted to have that flexibility to be able to utilize the full capacity of that amount of space.
Okay. Well, those are all the questions that we had for you. So at this time, I'll turn it to public comment. If anybody does have public comment, please fill out a speaker slip and you'll have 2 minutes. Okay, seeing none. I'm going to turn it back to you, and I'll give your team about 5 minutes to conclude. You can use that time however you'd like.
Okay. So,
Do you want to just go through the rest of the presentation?
I'd just like to say thank you.
Yeah,
This has really been a great experience. Just getting out here and working through this. I live for this. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to work with the city and really grow this business to its full potential here.
Yeah, I think another thing I'd like to add is that I spent a lot of time going through the process with the dispensary, and one of the things that I've realized about not only the business here, which is still in its infancy, but what Santa Barbara has provided, which is very unique. I mean, there are not that many places in the state of California where you can do these types of things. So I spent a lot of time trying to find partners who really see this as an opportunity that is, it's not a right. This is a privilege. And this is exactly the way these guys approach it, and that's why they're here. I've seen a lot of different types of people come through Santa Barbara expecting that they're going to be doing what they want to do in the cannabis business, what they want to do, not what the city wants to do or what the state wants to do, and they fail every time. And the reason that these guys have been able to succeed at what they do is because they are so incredibly stickler on compliance. We have to be, because the licenses are extremely difficult to acquire, and they're really easy to lose. And so just being that these guys have had their licenses intact for as long as they have, with as little issues as they've had, is a real positive, I think, for not only our business, but I think for the community. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, I think that because the manufacturing side of this industry is almost the most mysterious of everything that occurs within this new and emerging industry, I feel that we've benefited in other states and municipalities with just continued education. We feel that there's going to be a lot of back and forth, especially once the facility is up and built out, to where different departments within the city, especially the fire department, really should come in so that we can walk through the process. Because as much as we could put pictures and slideshows together and plans on paper, there's just something that you can't gain that you can when you're seeing it and really experiencing it to understand and have that different level of comfort and knowledge. And so we really look forward as this process continues and really begins in a much more physical nature, that we'll be able to hopefully have you into the facility on a regular basis to show you exactly what it is that's occurring and really put some value behind the plans that you see on paper. And I think that that's going to be one of the most important factors for the city and all its departments, as well as the education that we want for the consumers. And so we've, our marketing outreach and community outreach is very important. There's a lot of products out there that the community really just might not understand. And for example, our water-soluble technologies, which are cutting edge, does something very unique that has never been available. And so when people consume cannabis through, let's say, an edible product or a beverage, a lot of times that will hit people in a different way. The experience that they'll have will be different based on their metabolism, because you're consuming that and it's making its way through your digestive system, which is unique for everyone. With the water-soluble technology, it's being absorbed directly through your oral cavity into your bloodstream immediately. And so regardless of whether you have a fast metabolism or a slow metabolism or how you've digested and consumed cannabis in the past, it's going to hit everyone very consistently every time. And so we want people to understand the difference, especially how to consume it safely.
Yep.
and knowing what the expectations should be, as well as what to do if you get worried or get concerned because maybe you've consumed too much, and what it is that you should do to sort of protect yourself and be safe about that. So we want to really continue education as one of the biggest factors in not only working with the city, but also working with the community to make sure that everyone really understands not only what we're doing from a manufacturing, distribution, and delivery side, but also what it is that we're putting out there in the marketplace.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much. There will be a lot of city staff if you do achieve a permit. Then a lot of the translation from the proposal to the actual tenant improvements and things will be, you'll have a lot of interaction with the fire department and others.
Great.
So, well, that concludes our session. So thank you. I was wondering if one of you could pass the keyboard down.
There you go, sir.
Just want to go over a couple more things from our end. Just to wrap up here. So just to wrap up for the viewers of this, to repeat, the city is taking public comment outside of this meeting, and there are two methods to submit that. One is through the mail, through this P.O. box here on the slide, and then again the dedicated email address that the city has set up, ccbpea@santabarbaraca.gov. So thank you to your team. I appreciate it. It was very helpful for us. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.